Hitler Youth is one of the most chilling aspects of World War II.
But have you ever wondered how Hitler managed to brainwash millions of children into believing his cause? As Adolf Hitler began to rise to power, he targeted children with propaganda. Hitler knew that the only way to get the German nation on his side was to first get the youth on his side.
While adults are more powerful, children are easier to mold and grow to be the next generation. Hitler intended to create a generation full of hating, strong Aryan soldiers, and thus the Hitler Youth was created.
Hitler began his journey by portraying the youth group as a sort of Boy Scout group. Children were appealed by the idea of youth must lead the youth, and the feeling of freedom from their parents. To get the next generation on their side, the Nazis put great effort into winning them over. The Nazis knew what appealed to kids: uniforms, flags, bands, badges, and stories about heroes. The Nazi Party was the party of youth against age, offering young people not just a dream but a role to play. They gave the youth an opportunity to be part of the creation of a new country. It was a way of channeling the natural rebelliousness of children into productive workers. Hitler began to brainwash the children by controlling the media and funneling anti-Semitic and other racist ideas through advertisement, television, and radios. One famous children's book, titled The Poisonous Mushroom, had anti-Semitic stereotypes portraying Jews as dangerous and evil. This next book, titled Never Trust a Fox on His Green Heath and a Jew on His Oath, was the first of 3 children's books to be published by Julius Streicher, the editor of the infamously anti-Semitic newspaper Der Stürmer, who was later executed for war crimes. Through stereotypical Nazi caricatures, nursery rhymes, and colorful illustrations, children and adults are told what a Jew supposedly is and looks like. The Jews are represented as children of the devil, evil creatures who cannot be trusted, and a contrast to the ideal Aryan race. The book ends with a chapter urging children to join Hitler Youth and to stand as a nation against the evil Jew. Propaganda posters urging the children to join the Hitler Youth were placed all around Germany. The posters told the youth to stand up against the evil in their country and to join the nation's newest group. The effort was successful and managed to convince millions of children to join the group. The Hitler Youth program became more severe as time went on. Textbooks were rewritten to fit the Nazi ideology, and all teachers were required to be a part of the Nazi Party.
First, youth groups with different ideologies such as communism or religious aspects were banned. Then, all groups besides the Hitler Youth was banned. Later, in 1939, attendance became obligatory for everyone eligible.
Gary Gribnitz, a former member of Hitler Youth, speaks about his experience.
As a young kid, it was inspirational, for lack of a better word. He had a very unique speaking style.
Er wird einstweilen dieses Angebot jetzt akzeptieren und den Deutschen endlich die Freiheit geben, oder wir werden diese Freiheit uns jetzt holen.
At that time, I understood most words that were being said. Nowadays, when I sometimes see old movies, don't make sense to me. Because I view things differently, I suppose. But at that time, it was impressive.
Denn ihr seid Fleisch, von unserem Fleisch und Blut, von unserem Blut. Und in euren jungen Gehirn brennt derselbe Geist, der uns beherrscht.
In 1932, the Hitler Youth had 100,000 children. By 1939, the Hitler Youth had over 8.8 million members. This was the largest youth group the world had ever seen. The Hitler Youth was split into 5 divisions organized by age and gender. There was the Little Fellows or German youngsters, which was for all children ages 6 to 10. The German young people was for boys 10 to 14. The League of Young Girls was for girls 10 to 14. The Hitler Youth was for boys aged 14 to 18. And its female equivalent, League of German Girls. Programs would include activities such as camping, hiking, singing songs, sports, games, and outdoor training exercises such as math and compass reading. The children in the youth group felt a sense of belonging, like they had somewhere to be and something to do. Meetings called home evenings took place in cellars, barns, empty buildings, and places far away from adults. Meetings were led by superiors not much older than the members.
In order to participate in the Hitler Youth, children had to prove that they were in fair health and of superior race. Disabled and handicapped children were allowed to join a special subdivision as long as their disability was not inherited. We were required to dive off the 3-meter board headfirst into the town's swimming pool, Alphonse Heck said. There were some stinging belly flops, but the pain was worth it when our leader handed us the coveted dagger with its inscription, Blood and Honor. From that moment on, we were fully accepted.
The Hitler Youth also encouraged homogeneity among the children and discouraged individuality. By practicing marching and military drills, the children learned to act and think as one. Soon, teachings became less focused on science and mathematics and more focused on physical health. Racial science was added to the curriculum, and children would spend over 5 hours a week doing intense physical exercises. Boys spent hours practicing military drills and creating a strong, capable physique. Girls did exercises such as gymnastics, synchronized swimming, and other rhythmic sports. Another main focus of girls' training was to become good housewives and mothers. Girls were trained in Kinder, Küche, Kirche, children, church, and kitchen. All young people were made to be swift as greyhound, as tough as leather, and as hard as Krupp steel. In order to motivate the children to train their bodies, competitions were held where older party members judged the children on different categories such as swimming, lunging, running, and jumping.
Im Stabhochsprung überspringt der Sieger eine Höhe von 3,50 Meter. Start zur 4x100 Meter Staffel. Jugendmeister wurde wieder das Gebiet Westmark in 43,6 Sekunden. Meter Kraulschwimmen der Mädel. Vera Schäferkort aus Düsseldorf ist mit 1 Minute 14,5 Sekunden die schnellste. 5 stürzen auf einmal in die Tiefe. Beim Turmspringen der Hitlerjugend. Der deutsche Meister Günther Hase, Hamburg, der direkt aus dem Kriegseinsatz zu den Kampfspielen kam, war auch ohne Training seinen Mitbewerbern klar überlegen.
One example of a child growing up in Hitler's rule is Henry Mettmann. Barely 11 when Hitler came to power, Henry is one of the many victims of Hitler's propaganda. He was the only son of a highly religious family and joined the Hitler Youth in 1934 when his Boy Scout group was merged with the Hitler Youth. While Henry's parents were heavily against Hitler, Henry was inspired by the uniforms and badges and was an enthusiastic member of the group.
I thought, what does he mean that these Nazis are so dangerous? They were always so friendly to me. I used to run alongside them as they marched, singing their songs with them. They were always so smart in their uniforms, the leather, the jackboots. Es marschiert mit ruhig festem Schritt.
Henry, like many other children, easily believed the propaganda he was taught. In school, he listened to his teacher talk about how the Allies had ruined Germany and how they must make the Allies pay. I hated the Allies for what they did to us, Henry said. I kept my mind busy with thinking about how one day I could help to turn the tables on them with bitter revenge. As part of the Hitler Youth program, Henry, along with millions of other children, attended a 3-week infantry.
When the boys of the fatherland become state servants, because the state regards physical training as their number one duty, and in camp they live by numbers. On the word, splash.
The purpose of the camp was to prepare the boys for military life. When he turned 18 in 1941, he was drafted to the war. After going through minimal military training, he was set to advance into the Soviet Union as a tank driver. He spent a year as a prisoner of war in the US before being sent to Britain in 1946. There he worked on farms across southern England before he was released in 1940. After his release, he moved to Hampshire where he became a committed peace activist. He later wrote a biography titled Through Hell for Hitler.
Before long, the Hitler Youth began to have serious effects on society. Children were so indoctrinated that they became obsessed with pleasing Hitler. Many children would turn in their own parents if they heard them talking bad about the Nazi Party. One child, Anna Zimmer, reported her parents for owning banned books containing taboo content. Her parents were arrested by the Gestapo and never returned. Anna was rewarded for having turned in her parents and was given a badge of honor. The absolute loyalty of the children to Hitler sowed distrust among communities and families, as everyone feared being turned in.
The Hitler Youth also accomplished exactly what it intended to. The children were so thoroughly brainwashed that they didn't question anything that was occurring during World War II. Adults who had gone through Hitler Youth worked jobs in concentration camps where they witnessed and took part in horrific acts, but because of their upbringing, they didn't see how truly appalling the camps were. These soldiers are so indoctrinated that they weren't bothered by the terrible things happening around them.
Because all of the adults were at war, children were appointed to take over jobs of men who had been drafted. Children took the jobs of firemen, police, factory workers, and much more. Many children were sent to fish, as they had proper training from the Hitler Youth.
Atlantikküste. Die Zeit für den Thunfischfang ist gekommen. In großen Schwärmen tummeln sich die gewaltigen Fische in den Fluten. Die Fischerboote sind sehr stark gebaut. Thunfische von dieser Größe wiegen mehrere 100 Kilogramm. Fische von 3 Meter Länge sind keine Seltenheit.
Older teenagers were also made leaders of Hitler Youth troops. By the time Edgar Gilsdorf was 17, he was in charge of a troop of over 8,000 boys and girls. Towards the end of the war, Hitler became desperate and started drafting younger and younger children into war. Children as young as 16 would be in charge of troops headed towards the front lines. These children were sent on what was practically a suicide mission, as while these kids were in peak physical health, they had minimal army training. "15-year-old Heinz Schütz was given half-a-day training with the Panzerfaust, which is a single-use light anti-tank weapon, before being given an SS uniform and sent to fight. Millions of kids were sent off to war, and millions of them were willing and ready to go, believing that they were fighting for what is right. Many of the children died, and those who didn't had to deal with severe PTSD for the rest of their lives.
Once the Allies defeated the German forces, many of the boy soldiers were taken by the Americans and other allies. From there, the children had two different reactions. Some children realized, after suffering through the atrocities of war, that Hitler was using them, in which case they would surrender to the Allies and would be allowed to return home. Those who were still heavily indoctrinated refused to receive help from the Allies. Some of the children spit at doctors and soldiers who attempted to help them. These children were put through denazification programs, where they watched the horrible things that were done to those targeted by the Nazis. The Hitler Youth was put to an end, and what remains is an abused generation.